Good evening, folks. It's good to see everybody here. Welcome to everybody. We'll open the meeting tonight's July 28th Board of Supervisors meeting. We welcome you all. I know you came out in the middle of a temperature of over 100 many days we've had, and this virus just keeps running around. I'd like to remind you, according to the state orders, please stay 6 feet apart. And please wear your mask. The virus is still there running around. Welcome, everybody. Okay, the next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, is there anybody on the audience that would volunteer to lead us in prayer before we start the meeting? Mr. Burke, we ask for a volunteer, sir.
Anybody else want to? Let us pray. Lord, we come to you humbly tonight to ask you to lead us in our endeavors. We praise your name and thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. Lord, we thank you for the rain, for those who have gotten it, and we pray for rain for those that haven't. Just praise your name again, Lord. Thank you for all our blessings. Amen.
Thank you. All right, the first thing we'll go through is the citizens' comment period. If you have anything you would like to discuss about the county, please come forward. I give your name and address for the record and speak your piece.
Good afternoon. My name is Oris Lane. I live on Shady Brook Trail, 650 in the county. I'm very concerned about a lot of trucks coming down my highway. I live in a residential area. People walk, people ride, but there are numerous trucks, such as the chip trucks that service Dominion Power, Hercules trucks, and Euro trucks, trash trucks. It's getting to be too many. I've spoken with Mr. White about this, and he has directed me to attend a meeting in October about the transportation. And I just wanted you to be concerned that at 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, they're not observing. They're coming through there like a bat out of hell. And as a citizen, and as my other neighbors have complained also, I think I should come and complain. As some of you know, when Embar came to the county, we did not want them down our road, that building itself. So they went out on Industrial Park. With that said, we didn't want their trucks to come through either. But I do believe their trucks are still coming through 58 to make that shortcut to go to 671. And with your help, I would like for you to do something about it. Maybe change the speed limit, or the other avenue is they go around 58 and hit 671. Again, I think I need your help with that. So you can direct me to do that, and I will be appreciative.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
Name's John Burchett, live in Seagull, William Martin's our representative. I think y'all did a really good job on the budget this year. I'm not sure, but I think you cut the tax rate from 89.5 to 89, is that correct? Okay. Only thing is, I've been The last time the board was a large, change in the board, they reduced the tax rate by 2 cents. And I think it was 2012. And then over the next 8 years, they raised the tax rate by 14.5 cents and put in a $200 fee on garbage. So y'all keep that in mind when you're thinking about the budgets, please. Next thing is I'm going to comment on courthouse proposals. We got 2 choices, one for $10 million and one for 16. I don't have any argument with the fact that the people, the judges, everybody that comes into the courthouse deserves a safe environment and a safe place to work and a clean place to work. But if we can do it for $10 million, it's a no-brainer to me. This brings the question, who is governing this county? Is it you guys or is it the judges? We had a good proposal for $10 million and they shot it down. Now it's time to stand up. The reason for you guys, at least 4 of you sitting in your chairs tonight, is because of the courthouse and the money that's given to the country club. Both of them cause uproar in this county. The voters have spoken loudly on what they want. We want what's right, and we don't want it at the cheapest price possible. I ask you to call the judge's bluff. Vote for the $10 million proposal. Make them take us to court and see if we got a good proposal at $10 million, they don't have a leg to stand on. You guys are the ones that govern this county. Make them adhere to what we say, not what they say. I know, I'm not sure how much the impact is on the loss of the pipeline revenue to our tax rate, but I'm sure we were counting on that to pay at least part of the courthouse fee for the money to redo the courthouse. We got other things that are in desperate need is to redo the jail, to redo the pound so the stray dogs can have air conditioning. And it won't be long till we'll get mandates from the courts to do something about those 2 things, and where we're going to get the money. I know I can afford that, okay? The Lord has blessed me, but there's a lot of people in this county that can't afford it. More taxes. And you know who's going to end up paying for it? It's going to be our children. Because when it comes to school budget, that seems to be the target. The biggest piece of the pie is always the one that people want to cut. So I plead with you when you get to the courthouse. It's a no-brainer to me. Go with the $10 million. Thank you.
So, thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Good evening. Good to see everybody again. Dr. Ellis, good to see you up about. All of you. Gary Cross, Mission Church Road. It's a great night to be in here, Chris. Plenty of room to sit, hear people, to be comfortable. Too bad our school administration don't think as much back here about the public as y'all do. So I thank y'all for having us here this evening. I need to get a new ball rolling. Tonight I'm wearing my Farm Bureau hat and get with Mr. Johnson. Y'all need to discuss it. Y'all have to initiate it. And the county extension agent is aware that we may need an emergency declaration If you watch any news at all, for agriculture, emergency, if you watch any news at all, I don't think there's been over 3 or 4 days in the whole month of July that hasn't been exceeding the normal limits. Been without rain for 3 weeks, some places more, some places in the county still haven't received rain. July, no matter when you plant your corn, is the month of pollination. And heat takes a bigger toll on corn pollination than does water. So the lack of both has taken what was looking like a beautiful crop and decimated it just like the nut. A lot of people still plant corn rotation. A lot of people rely on it all the way. Would like to move to cotton. Cotton is supposed to be a drought tolerant crop. And we had way too much water in June, saturated the roots, and then the rain hit. It did not have, the dry spell hit, and it didn't have a good root system. Cotton is less than knee-high, blooming out the top. This cotton will only make a few hundred pounds at best. Some varieties, some plant dates will change that outcome, but I urge you to look around your neighborhood and see how bad things look. Peanuts still hold promise, but you got to rely on, I might as well go ahead with the old folks used to say, a wet June will make it no peanuts, okay? And we had a wet June before anything else. Average rain in August will hopefully set a crop, but it'll be a late crop. And we know what happens with peanuts when they get too late. So tonight I'll urge you, whether it's the later ripening malice, get with your extension agent, that Mr. Johnson instruct us to move forward for the most part. The steps that need to be taken to declare emergency declaration for farming in Southampton County. Al White is already starting that process, I believe. Mike and I believe Josh Holland is aware of all this. Tonight, I just ask y'all to pray that everybody's all receiving some rain and we can salvage some of this crop. But getting this emergency declaration early and getting moving forward with it is going to be very much important. It's good seeing each of you again, and thank you again for letting us come and meet this facility. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak?
They get rid of this thing. I'm glad I died. And I'd like to thank Gary for his presentation, because that was going to be my spiel also. I just informed him that agriculture is in serious trouble. We're worse condition right now than we were in 1980. The farmers was working on shoestring budget because of prices, and now with this drought, it's going to destroy all our possibility of breaking even. We're going to go in a big financial hole. Why is this important? Agriculture pays the bills. So I'm just warning the supervisors that you've seen nothing yet with the virus, shutdown. We're in a very stressful situation. So I'd like to thank y'all for holding the line on the current budget. Thank the citizens for electing responsible representatives to this board. The other thing, there's two other things we got to really be concerned about. That is, you've heard this from me before, you hear it again from me. we got to get out of the Hampton Roads district. We cannot afford to continue to pay millions of dollars to ship our money down to Florida, tunnels in the road system in Virginia Beach. We need to get out of Hampton Roads district. The state areas that regulate gas taxes, 10 cents, and on the unwater areas, you're going to wind up 35 cents. That's going to destroy the trucking industry, destroy all that's going on in the county, not counting your pocketbook when you go up to fill up at the gas stations. So you really got to look at General Assembly's so I have the road. We need to get out here. The next thing I would like to mention that is deeply concerning to me. I'm going around in my little realm of people, and every one of the parents of children who wonder why don't we go back in regular schools. You know that the county has got dozens of dead spots, and they don't even get the first single. How did these kids go learn? You got a neighbor with 2 children. Since they got out in January, they got absolutely no instruction from the school system because they can't get information. This is not a feasible solution. And following up, I was extremely disappointed in the school board meeting that nobody knew about it. Those parents didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. And that doesn't mean very much about me knowing anything about it. But what we gotta do, the kids gonna be years behind if we don't go back to having a regular school system. And that's, to me, was very poor leadership by the school board. I think it's time for y'all to stand up and say, put it on a referendum. Let's see what the people in the county want. I think it's time to elect the school board. It's been years and years. You get on the school board and you're there. You're getting $7,000, $8,000 a year for what? 4 of them didn't show up Monday night. So we got to put the school board election referendum on the ballot so that the people can have a say. So they are the main topics that I want to mention. I got several more, but Dr. Edwards told me to shut up, don't talk too long.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, is there anybody else who would like to come forward and speak? Well, if not, then we'll have one last call. Anybody? Okay, I guess we're all talked out. We will close the citizens' comment period. Next item is approval of the minutes of the board of supervisors for June. Anybody have any changes or revisions or corrections? Is a motion to approve? Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, they approved as read. All right, going to highway matters. The first thing on highway matters is the smart scale project. You have that all in your packet. I'm sure you've all read it, and I'll see if Mr. Johnson wants to give us just a brief overview of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everybody is familiar with the Smart Scale program that's been around since 2014, but this is the state's process to try to find the right transportation projects in Virginia to fund. As I shared with you all back in April, based upon guidance that we received from the Southampton County Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee, I prepared and submitted 5 non-binding pre-applications to VDOT for their preliminary feedback. Those projects included improvements to the Cortland Business Corridor. That's the project titled US 58 Cortland Additional Turn Lanes. As you all may recall, there are 3 crossovers starting there at the Dairy Queen and Simmons Farm. The next one goes down to Helena Chemical, and then the third one is down by Old Cortland, USA. Currently, those have very small turn lanes. So this particular project would keep those crossovers bi-directional, so you could go east to west or west to east. And it would make sure that each of those turn lanes in both directions were at least 200 foot long and included a 200-foot taper. The second project is here at Southampton High School. As you leave the parking lot, this project would propose to construct what's called a continuous green T, which is non-signalized. But basically what would happen is it would allow people that are exiting the driveway here at the high school, once it's clear from the eastbound direction, they can move over, and there's no longer just going to be a crossover there. There'll be an actual merge lane on the left side, an acceleration lane, where they can get over into that merge and acceleration lane and get up to speed so that they can merge into the westbound lane. No real changes on traffic movements going eastbound. They simply take a right out of the parking lot. Probably the biggest change associated with that project is that people coming off of Route 35 on to 58 would no longer be able to immediately get over in that left lane and make the left turn into the high school. There would be those little plastic pickets in that turn lane there that would prohibit them from doing that. So they would have to go up to the next crossover up, which is, I think, 3/4 of a mile up, turn around and come back in. Now, traffic that is already on 58 headed west can simply get in a left deceleration turn lane and turn in as they do now. The third project includes turn lane improvements at Newmarket Road and Southampton Parkway. Again, 200-foot turn lane, 200-foot taper. And then the final project is another non-signalized continuous green T at the intersection of Camp Parkway and Southampton Parkway. And that would also include turn lane improvements coming off of Southampton Parkway as you're headed westbound to be able to make that right turn onto Camp Parkway. The one project that did not score well was the Cortland Roundabout Lighting Project. We were advised by VDOT that it did not meet their criteria and that there was no need to waste time submitting an application under Smart Scale for that particular project. So we carried this feedback back to the CTAC when we met with them on July the 16th. They reviewed and discussed that feedback. It's their recommendation to the board that the county proceed with submitting full applications for those 4 projects that I just mentioned that were determined by VDOT to be eligible. The application deadline for Smart Scale applications is August the 17th at 5:00 p.m. Ultimately, we will need resolutions of support from this board, which I need no later than October the 30th. What I'm looking for tonight is your guidance on which projects, if any, you would like for us to prepare an application and submit. And based on that guidance, we'll get those applications submitted and then prepare resolutions of support for your consideration next month. With that, I'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. As you see, and I think everybody's read it many times, we can approve anywhere from 0 to 4. So with that, I'll open up the discussion and see what everybody thinks about the situation.
There are cuts at, Grace and Manila's, is that in any of these?
No, ma'am, that's been completely taken out of the project. The only thing the Cortland Business Corridor project includes now are those turn lanes, bidirectional turn lanes at this crosswalk.
Thank you.
On the CTAC board, and we studied these things for about the last 6 months, and I feel like all of them should be applied. Aspects and all of them, we agreed on it and voted to bring it before the board for approval, so I think we should approve.
Is that
Is that a motion, sir?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the 4 projects.
Is there a second? There is a second. Is that Mr. Faison? Thank you. All right, is there any further discussion? If not, then we have a motion and a proper second on the floor to ask our administrator to prepare and submit the smart scale findings application to the appropriate people. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, likewise, no. I think we have unanimous, 7-0. We'll approve to send that on down the line. Okay, monthly reports. If I call out your office or whatever you're interested in. Go, excuse me. We got one more there. Areas of concern. Cardiac out of the horse there.
I had, I believe it was Ms. Lane, came and called me today. She's concerned about the truck traffic on 650. I own a truck. I'm with her on her view. I think we should limit the truck traffic or slow it down. I go through that a lot on Portland for my business. Just driving a pickup, and I have been through them trucks. I'm not gonna lie about it. It wouldn't hurt a thing to limit the truck traffic or stop the truck traffic, but to limit the hours trucks can go through there or decrease the speed limit. So I think it's something we need to bring up at CTAC. And if there's anything we can do to help those citizens through there, I'm with it.
All right, any further comments?
It brought my attention some concern about the old Rankin Road, Highway 666. There's a lot of truck traffic on that road. A lot of trucks seem to be cutting through from Bransfield, from 67, from 189, coming to O'Hara Road. Now, there are businesses on that road, so some truck traffic is understandable. But a lot of truck traffic that going other places from other than on 666 are using that road also. So if there's something can be done about it there.
I have a concern.
You got the floor.
Okay. It's a dip in the road, and I think the pipe is broken on Sunbeam Road, near where it intersects Mount Moore Road. It's where there's been timber cut. The trucks have, I think, broken something.
Okay, does anybody else have any concerns?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
You have the floor, sir.
Cherry Bridge Road receivable back to 58 Highway has several amount of truck traffic, log truck in particular. And I'm sure we need to get at the bottom of the list, but I'd like to get that with the straightening of some of those carriers and some pretty bad accidents in the recent years involving trucks. And I'd like to get that on the agenda so it can begin to work its way up.
Okay. Anybody else have any traffic concerns, road concerns? Jones? Anybody else have anything? Then we'll go ahead and move on then. We should got those brought up so that they won't get lost. All right, number 4 is the monthly reports. Sheriff's Office. Animal control. Building permits. Cooperative extension. Treasurer's Office. Blackwater Regional Library. Solid waste quantities. And last but not least, personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to report 3 personnel changes during the month of July. We had 2 employees hired. Glenn Owens, effective July the 1st, in the Department of Utilities, annual salary $30,418. Austin Magruder, effective July the 6th, an employee of the Chowan Basin Soil and Water Conservation District. Their payroll runs through the county books, $40,330. And then we had 1 employee to separate, Bradley J. Taylor in the Sheriff's Office, effective June the 25th.
Okay, any comments? If not, we'll go on to the financial matters, number 5, and that's the year-end 2020, July for June appropriation resolution. You'll have that in your packet. Are there any questions about that resolution? If not, we will require a motion to approve that. For a second? Okay, the motion is approved to approve that in second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise? That's unanimous also. Okay, looks like the monthly bills list. Does anybody have any question about the bills? We have a motion. Supervisor Jones, a second to that? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Then the motion to authorize the payment of the bills goes through. All right, write-offs of certain uncollectible solid waste management fees. Do we have anybody from the county who would like to go through that?
I can speak to it, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if you like.
Go for it, Mr. Johnson.
Earlier this year, our county treasurer, Ms. Cindy Edwards, reached out to the legal counsel with the Virginia Treasurers Association and also a private group, Taxing Authority Consulting Services, PC. They specialize in local government tax collections. Her question to them was related to the statute of limitations for collection of delinquent solid waste management fees. Both of those attorneys provided her with an opinion that the statute of limitations for collection of those fees was 3 years. We forwarded those opinions to Mr. Raley. He reviewed them and has concurred with their respective opinions. So in accordance with those legal opinions, we're recommending that the board write off the uncollectible solid waste fee accounts in order to avoid overstating the accounts receivable in our financial statements. The collective sum of those accounts is $220,486.07. That includes $19,415.02 for fiscal year 2012, $34,884.22 for fiscal year 13, $62,020.35 for fiscal year 14, and $104,166.48 from fiscal year 2015. Included in your agenda package, you've got a complete listing of every one of those accounts so that you can see exactly who they were and the amounts.
Okay, does anybody have any questions concerning that? Okay, if not, we'll move on to appointments.
We do need a motion on that, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Okay, we do need a motion. Second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's unanimous. We'll go with that. All right, we'll move on to the appointments. Number 6. First one is the Industrial Development Authority Nuisance District, and I believe it's Updike. Okay, we'll be looking forward to that next month. The second one on that is the Board of Zoning Appeals. There are 2 districts, Berlin, Ivor, and Jerusalem. I might ask, are either one of those reappointable?
They are both eligible for reappointment.
All right. Then I think Supervisors Cornwell and I will contact them and see if they want to be reappointed. If they don't, then we'll find another appointee then.
I've spoken with several regarding the appointment.
Here. Okay, and I guess we could go ahead and vote on that one then. You make that in the form of a motion. And Mr. Cheston does desire to go on board again. All right, any further discussion?
Just point of clarification. Did I misunderstand you, Mr. Cornwell? Were you looking for somebody else for that position? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Cornwell.
Okay. Then we'll be both prepared then. Okay, then we'll both be prepared for September then. Well, no, it will be September, it'll be the end of August. All right, moving on to see the local board of building code appeals. Looks like the representative from Newsom's. And Updike, do you have anything on that? Okay, you'll have that for us in September then too. August, okay. The Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee. Looks like we have one expiring from Boykins and one at large and one from Jerusalem. I think we'll have to do some homework and have those ready by no later than September. Any questions on those appointments?
Well, I would like to ask Mr. White if he knows whether or not they're inclined to accept a reappointment. You know whether or not. Well, Boykins, Branchville, Danny Bolton, Randolph Cook, they had a large number, and Ash Buckley is Jerusalem. I was just wondering, you being on the committee, are they inclined to volunteer to serve, those three serve again to be reappointed.
I haven't heard anything saying they wouldn't. Nobody, they're all involved in it. It seems like they would continue, but I haven't heard them speak either way. So,
Mr. Johnson, is it possible that we could send some note to them and ask them to contact their supervisor if they'd be interested?
Certainly, and I can tell you that Mr. Cutchin and Mr. Cook have been very active with that group since inception. Mr. Bolton, I believe, has a standing conflict. He has not been able to attend any of the meetings. The group meets at 4:00 p.m. And he is unable to attend those meetings currently with his work schedule.
Well, would that fall to Mr. Mason?
I'll be prepared next month to appoint Chris to that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to contact the remaining people to see if they'd be willing to serve another term, or do they have experience. Okay. Anybody have any further suggestions on that? All right, we'll move on to number 7, which is the citizens' request to address the board.
We've got one other appointment, Mr. Chairman, before we get there. Virginia Alcohol Safety Action Program. I think most of you are aware that Major Gene Drury with the Southampton Sheriff's Office represented Southampton County on that board for quite a while, 12 years, and of course recently retired this past year. So he has recommended, and Sheriff White has concurred, that the board appoint Detective Justin Boone to represent Southampton County on that policy board.
Does anybody have any problems with that? We need a motion to that effect. And second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, I believe that's covered them all. Number 7, citizens' request to address the board. I'd like to welcome Mr. Ricky Blunt and Mrs. Michelle Covington to approach the podium and talk to us.
Good evening. My name is Ricky Blunt, and I am a resident of Southampton County. I stand before you tonight as a representative of Citizens for Change, and we are here to request the changing of the names of Blackhead Signpost Road and Hanging Tree Road. We are coming to you tonight adopting the philosophy of the late civil rights icon, Congressman John Lewis, when he stated, if you see something or hear something that is not right, not just, not fair, you have a moral obligation to do something or to say something. In our opinion, the aforementioned road names are demeaning, derogatory, and offensive to a large number of residents in this county, as well as to many visitors of the county. We realize there have been several attempts to have these road names changed in the past, to no avail. However, we are hoping that you, the Board of Supervisors, will have a record, as so many other entities all over the United States have had recently. For example, the state of Mississippi's legislators passed a bill to remove the Confederate symbol from the state flag. The Johnny Reb statue was removed from downtown Norfolk. Stonewall Jackson statue was removed in Richmond. A statue of Matthew Fontaine Maury, a Confederate naval officer, was removed in Richmond. The J.E.B. Stewart, a Confederate army officer statue, was removed in Richmond. Hanover County School Board voted to change the name of Lee Davis High School and Stonewall Jackson Middle School. Woodrow Wilson's name is being removed from a building at Princeton University. The Confederate flag is being removed from all military bases. The Confederate flags are also being removed from all NASCAR racetracks. Confederate monuments are being removed in Williamsburg. The Jesse Ham Center is being renamed the Hawk Center at Shawan College. James Madison University is renaming 3 of their buildings that were named after 3 men that fought for the Confederacy. University of Virginia removed the name Barringer from the wing of the medical hospital. Fairfax County Public Schools renamed the Robert E. Lee High School to John Lewis High School. These are just a few examples of recognition. My father, Gurney Blunt, always told me after I repeatedly violated his rules. He would say, son, when you know better, you should do better. And again, we are here to tell you that Blackhead Sandpost Road and Hanging Tree Road are offensive to a significant number of residents in this county. Our research on Blackhead Sandpost Road reveals that the road was named after the head of an enslaved black man was placed on the stake after he was caught and beheaded because he was thought to have participated in net terminal slavery there. This hideous act was done as a deterrent to other enslaved individuals that would consider repeating Turner's action. There are some people that would consider repeating Turner's actions. There are some people who would feel that taking the road name down would cause the area to lose a major part of Southampton's county rich history. For those residents that share this concern, we are recommending placing a historical marker in the area that would explain the significance of the road. Unlike Blackhead Sandpost Road, our research did not find any historical significance to Hanging Tree Road. It appears it may have been named because of the characteristics of the trees that were on that road. However, the name Hanging Tree is very inflammatory and again offensive. From 1882 to 1968, lynchings occurred in the United States 4,032 times. 3,446 were black, which is approximately 73% of the total that were lynched. Also, with the recent incident with NASCAR's only black driver, Bubba Wallace, at the Talladega Raceway, where the garage door pull-down rope was tied in the form of a noose, which caused major controversy. The investigation determined the ordeal was not racially motivated. However, the stir it caused is a testament of the sensitivity of the word hanging in the black community. The recent unsolved hanging of several black men and a woman in California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia is a concern as well. My personal experience with Hanging Tree Road recently was with my granddaughter who was enrolled at Southampton County for a program the school offered 3-year-old children. This was before the pandemic took effect. My daughter would bring my granddaughter to our home on her way to work, and my wife and I shared and transported her to school each day. Each time we transported her, we had to cross Hanging Tree Road, and we always felt offended by the road name. As a former businessman, a former member of Franklin City School Board, former member of the Franklin Southampton Chamber of Commerce, former Franklin Southampton Chamber of Commerce Business Person of the Year, I understand the significant role the Chamber of Commerce as well as the county administrator plays as it pertains to trying to attract business and industry to our county. I am also aware of things businesses consider when deciding where to locate. There would be access to major highways, access to an effective rail system, proximity to other major cities, and perhaps a racial planning of the immediate area, among other concerns. Please be advised that the members of Citizens for Change were either born and reared in Southampton County or moved here from other areas, and we all have the best interests of our county at heart. Therefore, we are hoping this situation can be resolved amicably. We currently have just over 7,000 persons that have signed a petition for the two road names to be changed. Because of the respect and concern we have for the county, we feel you need to be aware that we are very determined, passionate, and will be persistent about this endeavor. And we are willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish our goal. Lastly, we are requesting this board to waive the $500 fee associated with this request. Other localities are removing 10 to 20 feet granite and stone scattering at no cost. And how much does it actually cost to replace 4 or 5 road segments? Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Covington, and I am a resident of Southampton County. I grew up here, and I attended Southampton High School, where I was a cheerleader, a band member, and the Student Government Association president. I graduated with honors in 2001. I then attended Norfolk State University, and upon graduation, I returned to the county and taught English at Southampton High School for 3 years. I earned my master's degree from Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and now I teach in the Hampton City Public School System in Hampton, Virginia. But I continue to reside here in the county. To echo the sentiments of Mr. Blunt regarding the renaming of Hanging Tree Road, the current name of this street unnecessarily evokes the connotation of the dark and shameful history of America's South, of the thousands of Blacks who were unjustifiably lynched for purposes of entertainment and intimidation. I have found no documented research that suggests that any of these atrocities occurred on Hanging Tree Road. So the imagery that comes to mind, to the minds of Southampton and non-Southampton residents, is inaccurate and forgotten. To eliminate this mistaken association of our county with this barbarism, the name should be changed to something that more accurately represents the story circulating about low-hanging tree limbs. Might I suggest Low Branch Road, or something similar. Regarding the renaming of Blackhead Signpost Road, I do not share the same passionate disdain for the name as some others do. In fact, my stance has been that it should not be changed because in it lies a tragic yet true part of Southampton's history. It should be noted that some of my closest friends, both Black and white, disagree with me. As a student in Southampton County Public Schools, I heard very little about Nat Turner, and even less about Blackhead Signpost Road. I learned most of what I knew about Black history as a child from my parents and other knowledgeable elders in the community. Riding past Blackhead Signpost Road, I remember having difficult conversations with my parents about race relations in the county and the country at large. Changing the name alone eliminates these spontaneous conversations sparked by the bothersome street name for future generations. When I see Blackhead Signpost Road, I am not offended. Instead, I am inspired to know that my ancestors overcame even the most horrific tactics used to deter them from obtaining their freedom. However, I acknowledge and understand that there are others who do not share my perspective and are seizing the momentum of the moment to make changes that make the retelling of history more accurate, like the removal of Confederate soldiers from the pedestals on which they have been placed, and the removal of the treasonous Confederate flag from government grounds, and to make changes that make the reality of the history of the mistreatment of Blacks less offensive to our progressive society. Even though I initially disagreed with the changing of Blackhead Signpost Road, I and some others who felt differently from me were able to sit down together, hear each other, and come to a compromise, a strategy that is unfortunately uncommon practice these days. That compromise is the placement of a historical marker at the Blackhead Signpost Road and the Heron Road intersection, to which Mr. Blunt made reference. This would alleviate the offense inflicted by the street name that alone only nods to the historical significance of that spot, whose story has only survived by means of oral tradition, and would clarify and preserve the history of that intersection for generations to come. Just as visitors travel to view the Nat Turner historical marker near Cross Keys Road, which I look to see replaced soon, this marker too would draw traffic to the area, and would make a meaningful stop on the Nat Turner tours that people travel miles and pay to experience. I have read several sources which recount the events that led to Blackhead Signpost Road. The culmination of my research tells a tale of an unfortunate enslaved man named Alfred, who was owned by Levi Waller at the time of Nat Turner's insurrection. Alfred was not an original member of Nat Turner's group. In fact, when Turner attacked the Waller School, Alfred tried to escape the mayhem. Levi Waller watched from his hiding place in his garden as his wife and children were killed. The freedom fighter saw Alfred running and ran after him, thinking that he was Levi Waller. This instance of mistaken identity saved Waller's life, giving him the opportunity to escape. When the fighters returned to take what they needed from the Waller School, Alfred came back with them, perhaps by force. There is no research that implicates Alfred in any of the rebellion killings. According to Nat Turner's Revolt, Rebellion, and Response in Southampton County, Virginia by Patrick Green, Alfred did not remain with Nat Turner and his followers very long. He attempted to return home. However, he was caught by Alexander Pete and the Southampton militia. Unable to carry Alfred along in their pursuit of Nat Turner and his followers, Pete decided to maim Alfred by cutting his Achilles tendons so that his fate could later be determined, and he would be unable to reconvene return. Levi Waller happened to punt Alfred and attempted to bandage his legs, an action that further indicates Alfred's innocence, when the Greensville cavalry arrived. According to Levi Waller's petition for compensation for the property loss of Alfred, the Greensville cavalry leader, Dr. Scott, determined that the Southampton troops' actions were misguided and deemed that Alfred's immediate execution would operate as a beneficial example to other insurgents. So after a severe reprimand to Waller, Scott ordered that Alfred be tied to a tree and shot. Several sources indicate that it was Alfred who was then decapitated and whose head was placed on display at the intersection of Blackhead Signpost Road and the New Jerusalem Road, now Manhattan. Research also shows that Alfred's head was not the only one posted. There were several others posted in heavily trafficked areas throughout the county as a crude but effective form of social communication, and those heads were left on display for weeks. There were many Blacks who were killed after Nat Turner's rebellion. Some were guilty, but many were innocent. The number of Blacks killed varies from source to source. Some count as few as 25 and others exceed 200. Nowhere in the county are the lives of these people officially recognized. So while this marker would highlight the events particular to Blackhead Signpost Road, it could also memorialize the other innocents who died in the aftermath of the rebellion. With the presence of a historical marker, the name of Blackhead Signpost Road can be changed without the loss of historical significance. We suggest the name be changed to Alfred Road or to Signpost Road. We have emailed Dr. Jennifer Liu, the chairperson of the Virginia Historical Highway Marker Program, and have been informed that approval of such signs lies in the hands of the Virginia Board of Historic Resources, and the location of the marker is determined by the Virginia Department of Transportation. To be considered at the December 2020 meeting, the application with historical documentation must be submitted by September 1st, and the $1,945 needed to cover the cost of the sign and its installation must be secured when the application is submitted, all of which we endeavor to accomplish. With that being said, I stand with Mr. Blunt as a fellow member of Citizens for Change and call for the renaming of Hanging Tree Road and Blackhead Signpost Road, and the placement of a historical marker at the intersection of Blackhead Signpost Road and Manhattan Road. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both for your comments. Anybody on the board have any questions? I guess we can get on with it. At last meeting, the board voted 4-3 to pass on the amendment so that this can be done by the agent or the Board of Supervisors, not requiring a petition. And that should go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will have a public hearing on that and get back to us with their recommendation. Anybody have any additions or corrections to that?
Well, that being said, is that gonna create a issue with the timeline, get this submitted? Gotta be a public hearing with the planning commission first. Am I correct on that?
You're correct. The planning commission has already advertised its public hearing for August 13th. So if they make a recommendation at that August 13th meeting, that means that the Board of Supervisors would advertise its public hearing on the ordinance amendment for September the 22nd. So if all that happens, if the board approves that ordinance amendment, you then have bestowed upon yourself the authority to initiate a road name change without submittal of a petition from the affected property owners along the roadways. So if the board moves forward with that, you would send that to the planning commission. They would have their public hearing in November on a road name change. And if they made a recommendation following that public hearing on November the 12th, this board would then advertise a public hearing on December the 15th, at which time you could make any road name changes official.
Okay, is that clear? Is everybody follow along with that?
No, I guess I'm a little dense. It's coming to the date, that would facilitate the marker.
That's a separate process.
That would be another process.
That's right. She's talking about a historical roadside marker that would be approved by the.
So we'll take it one at a time and effectively move on the road names first with application for the historical marker to follow. Is that right?
Well, I think I understood Ms. Covington to say her group was pursuing the marker. Did I misunderstand that, Ms. Covington?
That's correct.
Okay.
Our understanding is that the road changes happen through the board and the public hearings and all that you all have scheduled. The historical marker is a completely separate topic, and the timelines don't have to match.
If you missed in December, they meet every 3 months.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think we have a good plan. Everybody understands that. We'll get rolling on it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on that issue? All right, we have sort of a guest tonight. He's very familiar to everybody. Jay Benchak is President CEO of the Economic Development Trust of Franklin. And he'd like to present us a little in-service on broadband service.
Okay. Thank you for having me. As the chair had said, my name is Jay Benchak. I'm the president and CEO of Franklin Southampton Economic Development. The board had asked Franklin Southampton Economic Development to take up the issue of broadband in Southampton County to try and make sure that we can deploy broadband throughout the entire county, especially all the unserved areas. And the reason for this is probably been brought to the forefront and more evident now than it ever has been due to the pandemic and students needing to study from home. It also helps with socioeconomic equity within citizens to have broadband. So the purpose of this presentation today is to just give you an update on what our findings are, what types of technologies we think are best to be deployed, and what our steps are to get to that full deployment. And I'm trying to advance. I just hit that button. Do I not have it on? Okay, so what we've done is we've tried to find the best path to bring broadband to the county. And Governor Northam had formed the Commonwealth Connect, which is an initiative to bring broadband to unserved areas of the county, of the state of Virginia. Who is part of Commonwealth Connect and who's on the Commonwealth Connect team? The Commonwealth Connect team is the state's broadband experts. They come from the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Center for Innovative Technology, and representatives from the governor's office. How are we going to bring broadband to our rural areas? Frankly, we've got to do this by forming partnerships with Dominion Energy, Community Electric Cooperative, Prince George Electric Cooperative, Charter Communications, locally we know them as Spectrum, various wireless providers, and we're going to have to partner with surrounding localities. So I'm going to talk about each partnership and what they represent. So Dominion Energy, as you know, is an electric service provider, but what they are not is an internet service provider. So what they can do is they can provide what's called middle mile fiber to run, let's say, for long distances between dense population areas. What they would then do is they would lease the fiber back to an internet service provider. One of the challenges there is that most internet service providers don't like to lease fiber. The reason for that is it directly has a strong hit on their return on investment and on their ability to profit, because most of these lease agreements don't have an end date, so they're forever paying to lease the fiber. Community Electric Cooperative serves a lot of our county, and they are also an electric service provider. But again, they are not an internet service provider. They can provide middle mile fiber, and they too can lease fiber to an internet service provider. Prince George Electric Cooperative. Prince George Electric Cooperative also serves some parts of our county as an electric service provider, but the difference is they are also an internet service provider. So they can provide both electric and broadband service. You may have heard back around just after the new year, around January, stories about Prince George County, all of their citizens being able to get internet service. That is because the electric cooperative that serves them is also an internet service provider. It still was also in the making for, my understanding is about 5 years. So we've got some catching up to do with some of our localities, but that's why, to clarify, we can't really get internet service through our electric cooperative, the community one, or community. So Charter, or otherwise known as Spectrum, they are not an electric service provider, they are an internet service provider. They can provide broadband, cable TV. Their challenge is density of customers. It's just common sense, everybody understands that to run fiber out to rural areas does affect their ability to profit from the individual subscriber. Wireless providers. I didn't give a particular name because there are a number of wireless providers. Wireless providers can provide broadband and cable related TV in partnership with an internet service provider. So wireless providers still have to partner with and get permission from and collaborate with Spectrum in order to really be able to provide service to our community. I also talked about, I mentioned earlier, surrounding localities we need to partner with. Possible partnerships include the City of Suffolk, Isle of Wight. There are other surrounding localities such as Greensville County and over into North Carolina. But I'll get into why some of those partnerships may not be a great match for us. But why would we partner with surrounding localities? Broadband does not see local government borders. The cables run as the cables run. So for us to try to go it alone and not partner with a bordering community doesn't make sense. And on top of that, intergovernmental and regional partnerships help to leverage resources. So as it stands right now, Suffolk and Isle of Wight are great to partner with. I'm going to talk about some funding opportunities later that will explain why some of the other communities might not be ideal for us to partner with. So I want to talk about what technologies we can use to bring broadband to our community. There are two technologies that make sense, and that is fiber optics. That's just your fiber that everybody's used to and knows about, and then there's wireless broadband. Hard to see this one. I was all proud of this image because it shows satellite technology. You can't see it, but the main point here is some people have asked me, why can't we use satellite technology? And the reason we can't use satellite technology to deliver broadband to our citizens is that its latency is slow and it's very expensive. So what do I mean by latency? Satellite technology relies on satellites. When you hit your keystrokes, it's going to go all the way up to space, to the satellite, down to whatever source you're reaching to, back up and back down. It's actually relatively slow. And while there are a number of satellites orbiting the Earth, the number of satellites that have contracts that actually offer satellite broadband are relatively few. So really, satellite technology works well for really extremely rural areas like the Amazon or something, where they want to be able to connect to the internet, and it's their only option that they have, but it's really not a speedy or cost-effective technology. 5G technology, there's a lot of talk about 5G technology, and why are we doing all this when in the coming years, everybody's going to be able to create their own little hotspot on their own phone and use 5G technology to get fast broadband. The issue with 5G technology is it needs a great number of cell towers to operate properly. It needs a very high number of cell towers. So in the coming years, you're going to see 5G technology roll out in our urban centers, but you're not going to see it roll out in our rural areas. Already, we struggle with just having enough cell towers to service just cell. But 5G technology would require so many cell towers, you would actually be surprised. They need cell towers within several hundred yards of each other for it to truly be effective. And so that's really not a technology that would work in the county. Who is paying for all this as we try to move forward and deploy broadband? Well, there are grants out there, and I'm going to talk in detail about some of those opportunities. Private partners can help fund this, and when I say private partners, those are some of the partners I spoke with before, whether it be Dominion, Prince George Electric Cooperative, the Community Electric Cooperative, Spectrum. Those partners, as we go to apply for grants, there's a need for a certain amount of dollar match. Those partners would have skin in the game and an ability to get a return on investment if they go ahead and help with financial match. Then, unfortunately, as we move down the road with this, the county probably is going to have to look at the budget and see where we can come up with some money to help with matches. I've done some research on this, and I'm sure the first thought in everybody's room is, what kind of money is Jay talking about? As I've looked at localities throughout the state, about 20 of them, the lowest dollar amount I've seen for match is about $10,000. The highest that I've seen for a match is about $2 million. And truthfully, you have to dig deeper into exactly what they're trying to accomplish during that phase of their rollout to really know what kind of dollar amounts we're talking about. And I'll get into as we move forward as to how we can determine that and hopefully come up with a number this fall that the board can start to consider. Okay, so I talked about grants, and I'm just going to cover for you some of the grants that we're aware of that we can work with to bring broadband to us. And the first one is called the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative. That is a grant program that's offered once a year. You have to get your application in to DHCD by, this year it's by August 17th. This is the grant that most communities start with. And the reason for that is the Commonwealth Connect team really helps to walk you through the grant application process. They help you to know what kind of questions and things you need to answer. The challenge with this grant program is you need a great deal of cooperation and help from whoever your incumbent service provider, internet service provider is. In our case, that is Spectrum, otherwise known as Charter. We can't do anything as far as moving forward with broadband without cooperation from Spectrum. We can say, well, we're going to go with the wireless service. Well, that wireless service still needs engineering assistance and fiber connection to Spectrum's system and infrastructure in order to operate. So it's very important that we get cooperation from Charter and from Spectrum. I did reach out to county administration and the board about a month ago because I was very excited. We had a conference call with the Commonwealth Connect team and Spectrum. At that point in time, they agreed to help us with our application for the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative. But I'm a little concerned now because we're down to a little over 2 weeks to get all our information in for that application. And we still don't have all the information, or well, we still don't have any information from Spectrum. So that is a big challenge. I've reached out to our contacts at the governor's office. I've made the FSCDI board aware of this. We've also had some conversations with board members, specifically Mr. Gillette, who might be able to help us with leveraging contacts to make sure that Spectrum works with us. I spent a lot of time on that grant because it really is kind of a linchpin. You can also use community development block grants. You can use it to fund infrastructure. You can use it to fund planning for broadband. There is a program also called Go Virginia. We happen to fall in Region 5 of Go Virginia. When you go to apply for a Go Virginia grant, you really need the cooperation from at least one other, if not the entire group of localities within your region. So for us, that's Suffolk, Isle of Wight. Those are the two we'd probably partner with. But we also need an understanding from Virginia Beach and Norfolk to really move forward with that. And I believe we'd be able to get that. But again, we would need all the same information to apply for that grant that we need to apply for the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative. There's a Virginia Pooled Financing Program. That's to help with actually getting some financing. I'm pretty sure we're not going to have to go that route. Then there's the Appalachian Regional Commission. We don't fall within one of those zones, so we don't qualify for that. And then we get down to Tobacco Commission money. And this gets to an area where I talked about us partnering with bordering and surrounding localities. Well, Greensville County is a Tobacco Commission community. The fact that they get Tobacco Commission money can actually hurt us when we go to apply for some of these state level grants, because what they do is, let's say we worked with Greensville County and they can, and we applied for, we'll just say for easy purposes, numbers, we applied for $1 million, and then they realized Greensville County can get $500,000. So the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative folks would say, well, we're not going to give you the $1 million you asked for, we'll give you $500,000. So that lets you know that it's important to make sure that you partner with the right communities and you leverage the right resources at the state as well as federal level. Federal broadband funding, there's a number of programs out there, Community Connect Grant, Reconnect Loan and Grant Program, Schools and Libraries Universal Service Support Program, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, as well as Alternative Connect American Cost Model. Of all of those, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund is one that I think we will be able to work with and leverage, even if for some reason we do not get our application complete in time for the Virginia Telecommunications Grant. Because if we can continue to work and partner with Spectrum and they can get the information to us in time for that, that program becomes available in the fall. What are our next steps? So I've already talked about we want to apply for the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative. One of our first steps there is to submit a letter of intent, just letting DHCD know that we plan on submitting for that grant. We've already done that. We did that a couple of weeks ago. We have to have our application complete by August 17th. There is really close to nothing at the local level that we can do for this application process, and let me explain why. There are a few questions on the application that they ask us to answer that are real basic questions about what kind of programs are in your community to help people learn about the internet and help to teach students in school about the internet. These are all very easy questions we can answer on our own. The brunt of the application asks questions like, where exactly do you have broadband and where don't you have broadband? And where you have broadband, what are the broadband speeds? On top of that, what are the engineering challenges? And then they also ask for you to do cost estimates to roll out broadband in phases throughout your community. Every bit of that is really contingent on a partnership and the cooperation from Spectrum. So anyways, that's going to be complete by August 17th. August 25th, we had another board meeting. I will be back here reporting to you where we stand with this application, with the body application, as well as what our next steps will be. Hopefully I'll be identifying other grant programs that we can begin to apply for. We don't learn whether we're awarded the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative until December. So that's quite a long wait between August and December. But again, that doesn't mean we're just sitting waiting. We start to work on applying for other grants. If awarded in December, we can begin project build-out in 2021. Project build-out, the project, whatever project is identified for phase one, has to be complete within 12 to 18 months. How long is it going to take for full deployment? Well, that answer is 3 to 5 years, but it could take longer. 3 years is if we get complete cooperation from the Spectrum and that we win every grant that we apply for and everything just goes absolutely perfect. You got to keep in mind, it also takes time to actually run this fiber and get it fully deployed. 5 years is what I've been told by the Commonwealth Connect team is that could be expected. If we don't get full cooperation from Spectrum, then it could take longer. So that's kind of the time frame that we're in. I know I covered a lot, but I left room for people to ask questions. And any questions I can answer, I'll work on being able to answer when I come back in August.
Thank you, Jay. Does anybody have any questions? Board?
Okay, well, thank you, and I appreciate this board having the foresight to give FSEBI this as a project. I know that some of the projects boards have given us in the past have been somewhat controversial in some cases. We serve at the will of the board, and I truly appreciate this project because I do see this as a workforce development. I see it as social equity. I see it as economic development, and I can't think of a better project that the community could be taking on at this time, so thank you.
All right, no questions, move on. Thank you very much, Jay, for your presentation. A lot of information to absorb there. We'll move on then to public hearings. We have two public hearings tonight. The first one is a public hearing, zoning map amendment for Parker's Peanuts. And I believe Mrs. Beth Lewis will have some introductory remarks for us.
Good evening. It's nice to be back in person. This is a request for a zoning map amendment for the Parker's Peanuts facility on Southampton Parkway. The address is 28210 Southampton Parkway. You probably remember it as the Charlie's Glass Building, and there was an antique store there. Well, the Parkers have purchased that building. They are working on renovating the front of it to turn it into their retail store, and the changes to the outside of that building are quite noticeable, and it's quite an improvement in that section of Southampton County. The building behind is a storage warehouse. They would like to move their peanut processing from where they work now to this property on Southampton Parkway. However, the zoning ordinance requires that that property be zoned M2, which is General Industrial District, to do peanut processing. Now they can use it as a warehouse and use it for storage, but they can't do the cooking of the peanuts until the zoning is changed to M2. Right now, they're not working on that building except for to use it for storage. They're just working on the front of the building. So they have requested a change in the zoning to CM2, Conditional General Industrial District. On the second page of your staff report, you can see an aerial photograph. There are two parcels of property tax, parcel 7618K and 7618E. The building sits on both of those tax parcels. The rear building is the one where the zoning is changed, and if the zoning change is approved, they'll do a recombination plat and move the property line. So the entirety of the front property is the commercial building, and the entirety of the rear property is the manufacturing building. They have proffered only certain uses in the M2 district. They include any manufacturing, processing, storing, or distributing permitted in the M1 limited industrial district, agriculture and forestry as permitted in the A2 district, a dwelling for resident watchmen and caretakers, business and office supply establishments, office and office buildings, studios, and the like, business, professional, or administrative, restaurant or cafeteria, and peanuts, buying, storage, and processing. The Planning Commission held a public hearing. The applicant's attorney spoke, and a neighbor across Southampton Parkway spoke, of course, both in favor of this request. The Planning Commission also had a favorable view of this request. Several of them noted that they have known of Parker's Peanuts for many years. Parker's Peanuts, I believe, has been in Southampton County since the early 80s. And the Planning Commission made a unanimous recommendation of approval. Planning Commission member Jack Randall recused himself because his firm is the one representing Parker's Peanuts, but the 6 that were there voted unanimously to recommend approval of the change. They are still working with VDOT about entrances and turn lanes. They had planned to have a traffic study done in March, and engineering firm hasn't been able to work since then, so they will get that done. That will be done in conjunction with the building permits for the rear of the building to turn that rear building into a manufacturing facility. And the Parkers are here as well as their attorney, if anyone has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? People from board, from Ms. Lewis?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. We will therefore open the public hearing for public comment. Anybody who would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Kevin Frank. I'm the attorney for the Parkers, and I would like to take this opportunity just to add a little bit to what Ms. Lewis has said. She has very accurately spoken on behalf of this application. I would like to add that the Parkers have made great progress in renovating the store. They are expecting to be able to open the store front sometime in the month of August. In addition, they do still wish to plan to move their processing to the rear, which is the point of this application for rezoning. However, due to everything that has happened, they in all candor will probably not be making that relocation, that move, until sometime next year. The traffic study was commissioned in March of this year. Due to everything that has happened, that traffic study has not been completed. We do anticipate that traffic study will be completed probably within the next couple of weeks. And that will make recommendations in relation to what VDOT has raised as concerns. At this point, obviously, I do not know what the result of that traffic study will be. One of the concerns raised is the idea of large trucks, and possibly large volume of large trucks coming into this property off of Southampton Parkway. On behalf of Parkers, I can tell you that the trucks that will actually be coming in are essentially large panel trucks, and they will not be incredibly numerous. 1 or 2 a day is the number that currently comes in and out of their processing facility. This is not an expansion of their processing at this time. This is a relocation that would be much more efficient to put everything in their operation in one location. And as Ms. Lewis indicated, the business of Parker's Peanuts has been part of Southampton County since 1984, and they continue to work here in the county and have taken over the former storefront there and remodeled it. And if you drive by there, I think you'll see that it's coming along very well. And as I said, it'll probably be open sometime next month.
Thank you. Does anybody from the board have any questions for this gentleman? Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this application? Last call. One spot left.
My name is Warren Simmons, and I live at 27511 Southampton Parkway. I live diagonally across the road from where the Parker Peanuts is going, and I welcome them as a new neighbor. I think it's going to be great in just maybe next month now. As you're coming west into Southampton County, you'll be able to stop at Regainus Peanuts, Belmont, Ferretti's, and Parker's. You can get Nuisance Peanuts at Human Graces. And then Hubs is going to be up there at the old Farm Fresh building, and I think that's great for agriculture, great for peanuts, and great for candy.
Thank you, sir. All right, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Going on. We'll therefore close the public hearing. Board, I think you've looked at things over and any discussion among the board? If not, then we could entertain a motion.
I'd like to make that motion, and I'd also like to say that Bob's parents would really be proud of it.
Okay, a motion has been made to go along with the planning commission's recommendation to change this from B1 to conditional M2. Is there a second? Properly second. Mr. Faison. Is there any further discussion? If not, then we'll go to the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Unanimous. We have granted the application as per the recommendation from the planning commission. Okay, there's one other public hearing. This is a public hearing concerning the secondary and unpaved roads construction budget, priority list, and secondary and unpaved roads. And I see from the packet that we have Prince and VDOT here to discuss this with us tonight. We welcome you, sir.
Evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Tom Callett. I'm the resident engineer for the VDOT Franklin Renson. So this secondary 6-year plan based on state code requires localities to adopt this yearly. It shows the state secondary formula funds that are allocated to counties for their roadway use. There are several projects that are under construction or on the books that are not included in this plan, but that is just due to there's no secondary funding on it. So there's multiple funding types. These are just for secondary funding allocations. As you can see, the majority of the projects are paving roads in the order of the unpaved road priority list, and as well as the year of the funding allocations. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Anybody have any questions for this gentleman?
I have one quick question. Find out from VDOT what plan to pave the uncertain. It's been brought to my attention from some concerned citizens in my district that what's been done in the past is part of the problem we have with the situation with our roads tonight, with the grinding and breaking up around the perimeters and drainage problems and ditches. And is there any way we can find out what the ultimate plan for resurfacing them would be? Is it just a spray tar and put down rock, or do they do any resurfacing of the road to level it and of that nature prior to actually surfacing the roads, so that we don't have some of the problems we do now with some of our older roads?
Yes, so for the roads that we do pave, it is hard rock, it's not asphalt, just due to the cost of that. But we also do drainage, pulling ditches, replacing pipes prior to shooting them with hard rock. So, based on this plan, Buckhorn Quarter and Dickens Lane will be done this year. The rest of them are kind of based on how the funding is allocated. So if you look on the front page, there's many different fiscal years that the allocations hit, and we can't construct one or pay one until it is fully funded and the allocations are on that project.
Okay, are there any further questions from the board? Thank you, sir. If not, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody who would like to speak for or on this issue, please come to the podium. I don't see anybody. Last call. Then we will close the public hearing. Any discussion among the board before we vote?
Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention the fact we voted that it's a long, quicker road. Interested in seeing the priority of that road paved up to more of a priority than at the bottom of the list. Okay, so I feel it's my place to at least mention it.
Making that as a motion, sir. Anybody come to the motion here?
it would be
Mr.
my,
Cornwell,
it would be my certain preference. I don't know where we rank the priority, you know, certainly at the top, I don't, you know, I'm reasonable as well and wouldn't expect it to go right to the top just because I want it there.
all right, you mentioned that as a motion.
Yeah, sure, so moved.
What we need is a motion to approve the budget and the priority list. Mark? The amended list.
Up on water, that and Brandon, that's still slated for this year?
Buckhorn Quarter and Dickens are scheduled for this year.
So they're at the very top then.
That's correct. And they're followed by Champs Drive. Then you've got the section of Brandy Pond Road, then Rosemont Road and Settling, Delaware Road, South Franklin, and Quaker Road.
That's the order.
That's the order. Yes, sir.
Chris, you were mentioning which one?
One more time.
What was the road you were mentioning?
Quaker.
Buckhorn Quaker. Okay.
So once if the motion is passed, then Quaker Road would automatically move up. That's the way.
How does that work? Can you change it or one road?
Yes, certainly this board can change the priority order any way you see fit. The funding is available, as we mentioned, to proceed with Buckhorn Quarter and Dickens. So those two will come off the list this year if you leave them in the order that they're in. And then, of course, the other four would move up. Now, if you want to move Quaker up, for instance, if you move Quaker to the third position behind Dickens, that just means that Champs Drive, Brandy Pond, Rosemont, and Delaware, it'll take longer to get those done.
Everybody understand that?
I don't have a problem moving it up.
Okay, would you like to make a motion then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we'll move Quaker Road up to third position because the other two are already planned, I guess, coming up. That's good with you?
I'll second Robert's motion.
Is there a second on that? Okay, Mr. Cornwell. Okay, so the motion is that we move Quaker Road up to the third position. And I believe there was a second on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's see. We've already closed the public hearing, so the only thing we have to do is vote on that revised motion. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. So we have a revised list there, Mr. Johnson.
So noted. Thank you.
Okay, that's clear. We'll go ahead and move on to an overview of the school resumption plan. I don't know where to jump in here. Is there any volunteers?
I'll just mention, Mr. Chairman, several of you all have expressed interest in this topic, so I wanted to make sure that you were kept abreast of what was going on with this issue. When I put together the agenda package last week, what we included was the presentation that the school board administration made to the school board back a couple of weeks ago. So you had a copy of that full presentation. I think, as most of you all know, the school board did meet in a special meeting last night and actually took action. It's my understanding that they voted to begin the school year, at least the first 9 weeks, under a virtual learning scenario. And I would yield to any of the board members that were actually at the school board meeting if they'd like to elaborate on that. But just wanted to keep you all in the loop on that issue and see what kind of conversation you all might have.
Wait, I don't know if this is true by word of mouth. It was to resume virtual for the first 9 weeks and then decide after that. Anybody have anything to add to that?
Myself and William Hart were at both of the last 2 school board meetings where they made this initial presentation that's included in the budget packet, as well as a secondary presentation by the superintendent last night, as well as her recommendation to the board and their subsequent approval of her presentation. And I won't get into the weeds of all of that. I will say that 5 of the 9 school board members were present and they passed with 2 dissenting votes the recommendation that Dr. Edwards just referenced for our kids to go back to school 100% virtually for the first 9 weeks of this coming school year at a cost of, you remember the exact number, it was $1.1 or $2 million additional funding that was going to be necessary to fund that proposal.
The only thing, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was 1,125,000, I think. Could be wrong. That's on 1.5, I believe.
If you do the math, there were 57% of the school board represented there. I honestly have to say that I felt that there should have been 100% there to make this decision.
There were two members that were connected by telephone. 2 that were not in attendance at all. The motion was made over the phone and seconded over the telephone. And there were 2 dissenting votes, but it did pass. I don't have any children in the system, but it did. There seems to be information coming out that the county might want to take a look at regarding the lower grades and the virus not passing from students to teachers. And that coupled with some of the teachers' opinion that they really didn't want to get back into a classroom setting. The data that's coming in almost weekly points to the fact that the lower grade of students are not passing this virus to the teachers. And they are also concerned. I have a concern for them because they're probably the most difficult to, as was noted in the meeting, to hold their attention for the hours that are needed for instruction during the day when they're not in a classroom setting. So it's going to put it's a big challenge for the system to be able to come up with a solution. And it seems like information is slow coming out of Richmond. No, they're looking to the county, but it's my memory that the Board of Education in Richmond was looking for the county school board to come up with a plan and present it to Richmond. And it seemed to be in the meeting that the board was waiting for information from Richmond. And so you're going back and forth with a lack of information for the parents to really have a whole lot of input to help the school board. But at any rate, they are gonna go the first 9 weeks with all virtual. It would seem, I don't know, it would seem to me that the buses could be dedicated to the lower grades, the upper grades, the high school students, particularly opinions and seniors, sophomore opinions and seniors. Would be more able to take advantage of virtual learning than the lower school. And, they'll have to work that out after the 9 weeks, I suppose.
It's $1,172,000 is the exact number
That is.
that we were referencing.
Okay, any further comments? If they're not, we'll move on. Does anybody else have anything to say concerning that? Well, it's a very difficult situation. We've never been in it, so that said, we left it in the hands of our educators, so we have faith in them, we'll move on. Okay, number 11, consideration of agreement for architectural services for the Southampton Courthouse.
So, Mr. Chairman, we talked about it last month. After the receipt of a number of unfavorable comments on the initial concept of the courthouse renovations from the judges back on May 28th, the design team went back to work, revised their plans, and presented a second proposed concept to the courthouse stakeholder committee, which includes the city and county elected officials, as well as the courthouse users group, which is the judges, the clerks, the Commonwealth Attorney, Sheriff, the Supreme Court staff, and the Southampton County Bar Association. That second concept was rolled out to that group on June the 29th. You've got a copy of that concept in your agenda that includes floor plans as well as exterior elevations of what the courthouse would look like if renovated under that concept. In summary, it provides a total area of 40,000 square feet, 12,750 of which is renovated space, 27,250 of which is new construction. Approximately 12,000 square feet of the existing space would be demolished for new additions. The area slated for demolition would include the current records room, the current circuit court clerk's office, as well as the area that was added in 1996, which includes space for the district court clerk and judges' chambers and jury deliberation room upstairs. It would also demolish the small area that currently serves as the lobby between the 1960 annex and the 1834 courthouse. The total budget for the construction budget for that project is $15,909,381. But the total project cost, which would further include the cost of the design, new fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, as well as the cost associated with temporary facilities for the courts while the project is under construction, is estimated at or below $20 million. Just to remind everybody, the cost of the portions of the project that serve the circuit court, clerk of the circuit court, the Commonwealth's attorney, and the sheriff would be shared between the city and the county in the proportion that the population of each bears to the aggregate population of both. Southampton County will be 100% responsible for funding those portions of the project that serve the General District Court, the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, and the Southampton General District and Juvenile and Domestic Relations Combined Court Clerk's Office. Of note, it's important to recognize that subject to this board's and the City Council's agreement to move forward with the design of the proposed concept, the judges have agreed not to vacate the courthouse this month as they previously indicated, and will continue to hear cases in the courthouse until such time as construction is ready to commence. That concession by the courts will save hundreds of thousands of dollars on the cost of temporary facilities. I will note that the city of Franklin voted last night 7-0 to support this concept and move forward. So with your agenda tonight, you'll see a proposal from Glavian Homes, the architect that we've been working with, to proceed with architectural and engineering services that would carry us all the way from schematic design through the construction phases and includes both typical basic services as well as the supplemental services that we would anticipate encountering with this project. The total cost of Glavian Home Services would be a stipulated sum of $1,735,075. They would also seek to recover reimbursable expenses at cost plus 15% with a not to exceed cap of $30,000. This includes things like mileage for trips down here, color copies, those kinds of things. At this writing, it's still uncertain whether there are some services that we will need. That includes development of a stormwater prevention pollution plan, design of stormwater management facilities, or data conversion associated with floodway modeling. The cost of those services are currently included in that amount I just gave you. If they are subsequently determined to be unnecessary, we'll remove them from the agreement and the compensation will be reduced accordingly. The maximum credit we can expect to receive if those services are removed is $14,175. Based on a notice to proceed by August the 1st, Glavian Homes would anticipate the following schedule. They would expect to have all the construction documents completed by April the 30th of next year. We would then advertise for construction bids on or around July 1st next year. They anticipate about a 16-month construction window, so that would mean construction would be complete at the end of the fourth quarter of 2022. Currently, we expect to be November. Included with your agenda packages, we'll note that we've got not only the proposed contract for Glavian Homes, we've also got that concept design for everybody to see. There is a detailed line item cost estimate for the construction cost, as well as a very lengthy courthouse site assessment report that I think you will find interesting.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments on that? Any discussion? A lot of hard work gone into this.
I would like to comment a little bit. Mr. Burchett's benefit in that, in this process, as you recall last year, a lot of it was written to the county, I think in July, am I right, Mr. Johnson, that if significant progress was not made, the court would be closed. Is that how it was worded? My memory is correct. And that was going to be a substantial cost to the county. We're able to avoid that. And previous architects had put a cost on that of upwards of close to $2 million. And the judges agreed to allow us to continue court until construction began, which was a substantial savings, and personally it was a relief to be able to work that out with the judges. And they even commented, they realized that a lot of times these timetables are extended. You expect construction to be completed in 14 months or 16 months, sometimes in 2 or 3 months overruns. And they have agreed to work with the county to not close courts until actual construction begins. So I also checked with, before this concept was presented, on the, with the town of Cortland and parking, and that was not an issue, in this proposal that would affect cost of the project. So all in all, it was, the final estimate was higher than I had hoped for. At the same time, it was a real benefit not to have that court closed and avert an expenditure that certainly was not expected in the overall budget of the process of the project. So with that said, I would recommend the board accept this motion to accept the proposal from Blave Homes and
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Jones. Therefore, is there any further discussion before we vote? I personally think that we've got a pretty good deal off the bat fund and never came along, but I think under the circumstances, it's the best we could do. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Unanimous. We'll go with the request, accept the proposal, authorize Mr. Johnson to do all things necessary to push it forward. Okay. Capital funding requests. We have two. One from Cortland Volunteer Fire Department and one from Ivor. We do have money set aside for these purposes. With no further ado, I would like to recommend that we go ahead and appropriate $14,000 to the Cortland Volunteer Fire Department. That's a motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, we'll let them have that money. And Supervisor Cornwell, I believe the next one's in Europe. Would you like to comment on the Ivor request? Well, I'll go ahead and recommend also that the Ivor Rescue Squad get $16,000 that they requested.
Is that a separate motion? Dr. Edwards?
Excuse me?
Are they separate motions, one for Cortland, one for Ivor?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a second to that?
Yeah, second.
Okay, second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, we'll grant that money. Well deserved. Number 13, funding request, speak their names. The Virginia War Memorial Foundation. I'm not really very familiar with that. Anybody familiar with that? Then you have the floor.
Chairman, I'll just mention this, this went out to every Virginia county and city. I think last year, that was the first year they may have sent it out. I did not see it last year, but I did receive a copy this year. They're asking each county and city to consider funding to honor the memories of sons and daughters that made the ultimate sacrifice in defending their country. There are currently 44 sons and daughters from Southampton County who made that ultimate sacrifice, and names are inscribed on the memorial's Shrine of Memory in Richmond. And in your agenda package, you've got a complete listing of those names that go back, again, with World War II, I think, and go all the way to the recent War on Terror. All the funding for this campaign will go to support programs and services that are provided by the Virginia War Memorial Foundation. All of those programs are available free of charge to Southampton County teachers and students. They did not request a specific amount. I did just do a quick search. I can tell you I found that Nottoway and Wythe counties resolved to provide roughly $1 annually for each of their sons and daughters. For us, that would be right around $50, obviously. Augusta County agreed to provide $200 from each district in the county, for a total contribution of $1,400. Of course, any funding is subject to annual appropriation, so we're really just talking about current fiscal year. If you all want to contribute, any future fiscal years will have to be considered in the future. So far, there are 18 Virginia counties that have favorably responded, 3 cities and 4 towns.
Any comments?
I'd like to see us do the $50. That's the least we can do for that sacrifice.
Is there a second to that? Anybody second that? Basically, you second that?
She make a motion.
I'm making a motion.
I second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. It passes. All right, we go to number 14, which is agreement with the Commonwealth's attorney regarding mandated prosecutor position associated with review of body camera footage. I understand Mr. Cook has agreed to defer this because he really doesn't have space for another attorney. So we don't need any further motion on that at this time.
I don't really need any action, Mr. Chairman. This was just for your information. I just wanted to remind you all of the commitment that Mr. Cook made back when we went through the budget process, when he agreed to not fill this position. So we certainly want to express our gratitude to Mr. Cook.
Okay, thank you. And number 15, resolution authorizing continued participation in the Western Conroe Home Program Consortium and approval of the related cooperative agreement. Anybody have any comment on that?
So this is a regional group that we participated with since June of 1995. It also includes the cities of Franklin, Suffolk, and the county of Isle of Wight. This group is able to access federal financial funds to help with affordable housing initiatives throughout the region. The funding actually comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and then they funnel it through these regional consortium. The STOP organization out of Norfolk presently serves as our subrecipient. They administer this program on our behalf. Prior to that, many years ago, the Southampton County Assembly served as the subrecipient. In order for us to continue to qualify for this funding, HUD guidelines require that we periodically renew our cooperative agreement and pass a new resolution of support. I will say over the last 25 years, we have drawn down just slightly less than $1.15 million in federal home program funds. And we've been able to use that funding to provide affordable housing for a number of first-time home buyers, and have also rehabilitated a number of other qualified homes. If the county wants to continue having access to these funds, we need you to adopt the resolution that's in your agenda package, as well as authorize me to sign the cooperative agreement on behalf of Southampton County.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody like to make a motion concerning the resolution?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. There's no any further discussion? Not. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. That's passed. All right. We go down to miscellaneous. Number 8 is request for distribution of proceeds from the delinquent tax sale. And I believe Mr. Rayleigh has a brief report for us on this. There you go, Richard.
Within the specified period of time allowed in the statute. If there's any excess, people go forward and apply for it. And all times, rare times, I suppose, people forget to apply for it, and then you can pass an ordinance after the deadline is passed, allowing them to receive the funds. And you've done that before. The problem with this one is it's unclear, at least from a legal standpoint, as to who these heirs are. As Mr. Francis points out, and a letter that he wrote for previously, there's not been any list of heirs as such filed in the clerk's office as to any of these people. The danger for this board, as in County, is if you just say, well, this lady is listed, and let's go ahead and divide the money among these people. Then, what are you going to do when an heir comes forward that she hasn't listed? And they say, well, no, we're entitled to it too. You open up the proverbial Pandora's box. And there's another point too. She suggests in one of her letters that some of the heirs are represented that she doesn't speak for and are represented by counsel, but we haven't heard from the counsel, so that's what illuminated the background. It's a very small amount of money, but it's enough money to create a mess. And my recommendation is, under these circumstances, you're better off to leave it alone. Pardon?
Correct.
As I understand it, it'll remain in surplus, is that right?
Pardon?
Will this sale proceed remain in surplus?
Well, they come to the site and it's not like $4,100, $4,200 if I'm having to. And, you know, the people are supposedly know that the surplus funds after payment of the tax lien and other liens, that they have a specified period of time to apply. And then if they don't apply, this board can agree that they can still get the money. And that's not what the issue is here. The issue here is a proper and legal identification of those entitled. If you pay the money out to those that are before you right now, you set yourself up for another heir to come forward, or another group of heirs to come forward, and also want their share of the money. And you might end up turning $4,100 into $10,000.
Okay, does everybody follow that? Any further comments? Thank you, Mr. Rayleigh. We'll move on to B then, summer newsletter. Attendance spreadsheet, Blackwater Regional Library. The abstract of votes, June primary elections. The notices. No notices. Correspondence. All right, are there any late arriving matters?
Emergency declaration, agriculture.
Go ahead.
Well, I think we need to adopt an emergency resolution declaration. What Gary Cross brought.
What's involved in that, Mike? Do that emergency declaration for the agriculture.
Usually we prepare a resolution in advance so everybody can see it, but they're pretty standard. If this board is comfortable going on record as being in support of that request, you can just plug in our standard language and have you all approve that. Go ahead and authorize approval of that tonight.
Anybody have any problems with that?
I'll make a motion, we move forward with it.
I second it.
All right, motion and second, discussion. Those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, no. Okay. As the last thing, are there anything that anybody would like to add to the next meeting for discussion?
I've got 3 things. We need to look at this Hampton Roads Transportation District. I know James City County got out. And we need to look at what we need to proceed or what we need to do about a board appointed school board or elected school board. And also an update on the Bradshaw lawsuit.
Okay, those 3 things, anybody else have anything they would like to add to next month's agenda for discussion? All right, I guess we've talked it all out. It's a busy night. The next thing on the matter is a motion for adjournment. All right, adjourn.